I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition. It's March 12th, 2014. Tonight I have a few different things I want to get into, including an update on Fukushima. I'm getting into a few other things as well. One thing I want to throw out there right off the bat is the t-shirts are on their way to me from the printers. So all of you that ordered a t-shirt, all of you that pre-ordered the shirts, I should say, because they haven't even gotten here yet. So all of you that filled out pre-orders, I will be able to start mailing your shirts out very shortly, actually. I should have them within 5 or 6 days. So within like the next week and a half, the shirts should be mailed out and everybody should be getting them. So exciting news for everybody that pre-ordered a new federaljack.com/downtherabbithole t-shirt. And for those of you that do not know what I'm talking about, because perhaps you don't realize that I have new t-shirts available, yes, I have new t-shirts available over on federaljack.com. Go grab one. Support the website, support the radio show. Shipping is included in the price. I have small to triple XL. Price is $20 except for triple XL, which is $25 because the shirts cost a little bit more. But shipping is included, and while supplies last, I throw in a truthfrequencyradio.com bumper sticker and some federaljack.com flyers, and I think I have a few DVD copies of a documentary called Wake Up Call. I have about 4 or 5 of them left, so I will throw those in the first 4 or 5 orders that I got, the first 4 or 5 pre-orders. I'll be fair about it and do it in the order that they came in. And if you get a copy of the DVD, there is no copyright protection on it, so you feel free to rip it and burn it onto as many DVDs that you want to and pass out to people around you. When I give out DVDs, I always give out DVDs without the copyright protection. So even those without copyright protection undoing software can copy them and pass them out. Help spread information. So federaljack.com, go check out the federaljack.com/downtherabbithole t-shirts. Available in black and OD green. OD is olive drab. Okay, now that I've got my shameless plugs out of the way, let's move on. First things I want to throw out there, some veterans news. Lawsuits revived by soldiers over burn pits. Yes, the burn pits in Iraq, and I believe they even have them in Afghanistan. But the burn pits that they have and that they use to get rid of trash and everything else, things that they shouldn't be burning. I mean, you could see what they did in Iraq. They were literally shoving brand new computers, cars. If something got misordered, rather than send it back, it got shoved into the burn pit. And plus all the other crap that they throw in there. Soldiers, airmen, sailors, Marines, all downwind of this thing, or of these things, are getting sick, having lung problems. And, of course, the government says there was no, what do they call it, evidence? Yeah. There's no evidence to support it. Well, that's not true. I got some news about that, too. But first, a federal appeals court on Thursday revived dozens of lawsuits, and this is from last week, revived dozens of lawsuits by soldiers and others who claim they were harmed by improper waste disposal while serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. The lawsuits claim Houston-based contractors KBR and Halliburton, big surprise, exposed soldiers to toxic emissions and contaminated water when they burned waste in open pits without proper safety controls. U.S. District Judge John Roger W. Titus in Maryland dismissed the lawsuits last year, ruling that the contractors could not be sued because they were essentially an extension of the military. Nice. Real nice. That's U.S. District Judge Roger W. Titus in Maryland. But a 3-judge panel of the Richmond-based 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals said in its unanimous decision that the contractors are protected only if they were following explicit instructions from the military. The court said Titus improperly tossed the case without sufficient evidence on that issue. One should check Titus's bank accounts after the case was tossed in the following months and see if his bank accounts got any larger, or if he got a new house, or if he went on any interesting trips like a cruise. That's how they work. In short, although the evidence shows that the military exercised some level of oversight over KBR's burn pit and water treatment activities, we simply need more evidence to determine whether KBR or the military chose how to carry out these tasks, Judge Henry F. Floyd wrote for the appeals court. Now, if some of you want to learn about the Iraq burn pits and some of the other stuff that went on, and you can bet your bippy if it went on in Iraq, it's going on in Afghanistan, go watch the movie. It's on YouTube, Iraq for Sale. In fact, I have a bunch of broadcasts that I'm putting together, some pre-recorded stuff where I'm taking some of the longer clips of the Iraq veterans against the war. And I did this in the past where I played them over the air, but the commercials always interrupted. And this way I can do it nice and clean and go from one to the next to the next. But I'm putting together a couple of shows where you're going to hear testimony about everything from war crimes to what it was like to be on the ground there in Iraq or Afghanistan. You're going to hear testimony about guys being forced to steal water. Troops, soldiers, U.S. Marines being sent over to Iraq, and then while they're there fighting, being sent over there by their government to fight, right, for freedom, I'm doing air quotes when I say that, they're forced to go do little side missions to get water for themselves. So they have to literally go rob pallets of water and steal them, not from the locals, but from private contractors on their own base. On their own base they have to do this because they're not given any water. And then the water that a lot of these Marines and soldiers and airmen and sailors were all showering and bathing in, yeah, it wasn't cleaned out. There was literally organisms swimming in the water. Go watch the movie Iraq for Sale. I'm going to play the audio during one of those shows. I'll edit it up to fit and everything, and I'll play the audio from the movie, and you can hear what they went through. But go watch it. It's on YouTube. Iraq for Sale. I think it's on Netflix too. You have Netflix? I'm sure it's on there. There's a couple good documentaries about Iraq that happened. Go watch it. It's absolutely disgusting. I mean, not only there were war crimes committed, people were killed and everything else, but then if you're one of these soldiers that says, well, I'm just following orders, I'm doing what I'm told. Okay, Does that include bathing in contaminated water that will forever harm you? See, you may not know it now. You may not even show evidence of it now. 6 months from now, a year from now, a year and a half from now, you could get sick from what you were exposed to in that water because whatever was in there got into your system. And the only way it could have gotten into your system was if you were exposed to it. And you were exposed to it. But that's okay, right? Because you're a tough guy. You went to boot camp. That'll beat that up, right? No, it doesn't work like that. I used to think the same way. It does not work like that. Except my brain got rid of that real fast. I actually got that out of my head. That was a side effect of their program, or that was a side aspect of their programming that did not stick with me. I just didn't think like that. But there are a lot of people that do think like that. You think because I'm a Marine, I'm invincible. I'm a soldier, I'm invincible. I'm an airman, I'm a sailor, I'm invincible. I'm a guardsman, I'm invincible. It's because you went through boot camp and you're trained. Doesn't mean anything. They'll expose you to harmful things, and if you get hurt, they don't care. They don't care. I know a guy here at the local VA. He's a sergeant in the Air Force. He now walks, if he's lucky, when he has a good day when he can walk. He now walks at a very, very slow pace, almost like a little old man shuffling. The guy is only in his early 40s. Well, I should say like mid-40s, but still. Gulf War I. He was a guard, and he happened to be guarding one of these facilities, one of these chemical munitions facilities. And he was there when stuff was blown up. They had to give him, they gave him 2 pensions, 2 different military pensions. People say, well, why did they give him that? Well, because the one keeps him, the one is separate. The one is because it's almost their admittance without saying it to the general public of what these soldiers were exposed to. The government admitted the one pension, it's 2 different things. One's his VA disability, but the other is because of they exposed him to chemicals, and they had to admit it because that's what made him disabled. And they admitted it. I don't know how he got them to admit it, but they did. I saw this guy, I don't know, 6-7 months ago. He was doing okay. He's walking okay. I mean, he was walking slow, but okay. I saw him 2 days ago, and he's shuffling like a little old man, and he's now got a service dog. And not that, I mean, I have a service dog. Not that having a service dog makes you like, you're on your way out, but he is really regressing. He's in his mid-40s. Gulf War I. Exposure to nerve agents and whatever other toxins were in there. And again, he gets a special pension for being exposed to those chemicals. And I sat down with him. He explained it to me a long time ago, and it doesn't even matter. It's a side issue. The point is, they even admitted. Some of these guys, they admit in some of these cases that they're exposed, but usually it's on a case-by-case basis. And I'm sure Sarge had to have had some sort of paperwork to back it up, because unless you have the evidence, I mean, if you have the evidence, then they have to eat it. But it's not something they'll openly even admit today. They don't want to talk about what people were exposed to from all those chemical munitions that were blown up in the middle of the desert. Camisea, things like that. Go watch Beyond Treason. That's a good film to watch. Joyce Riley put it together. Go watch Beyond Treason. That'll help you. At least it'll help you a little bit understand, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. It gets worse. Anyway, burn pits. Some new news about the burn pits, besides the fact that this lawsuit has now been sent back in motion. No. Something else. Researchers link Iraq dust with some vets' lung problems. Oh. Interesting. Researchers at Stony Brook University in New York have coined the term Iraq-Afghanistan war lung injury to describe respiratory symptoms developed by some veterans, and they have duplicated the problem in mice using dust from Camp Victory in Baghdad. In an article published Friday in the Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine, researchers including Dr. Anthony, and I'm going to wreck this guy's name, Zima, an allergist and assistant professor at medicine at Stony Brook, found that exposing mice to dust collected from Camp Victory in 2007 produced inflammation and changes to respiratory airways similar to those found in Iraq veterans diagnosed with constrictive bronchiolitis. And I'm probably mispronouncing that wrong as well. And it goes into detail. It says that they also contained their lungs. The mice's lungs contained angular, sharp, and solid particles with traces of titanium and iron, according to the study. So some of these lung problems could be from the burn pits, but some of the stuff that is in the dust itself. That these soldiers, airmen, sailors, Marines were all breathing, dust storms and everything that were going on over in the Middle East. What's in that dust? Well, they're telling you there's angular, sharp, solid particles, traces of titanium and iron. Well, that's interesting. Wonder if they should test that dust for DU particles. They should check it for a few things. Replicating the environment with dust from other locations, including the San Joaquin Valley in California, Kandahar, Afghanistan, and a titanium mine in Montana, the researchers could not produce the same inflammatory response, I should say. Iraq dust leads to lung inflammation in mice, similar to that seen in patients with polarizable crystals, which seem to be titanium, the study concludes. Interesting. Why do they have titanium shards in their lungs? I mean, if you were maybe down at the, perhaps ground zero, I could understand that in New York City. But titanium shards in your lungs in Iraq, unless maybe it's from bombs going off and things being atomized and thrown up into the air and into the dust. DU, different rounds being fired. I mean, it's not just the diseases that are going to pop out aren't going to just be from the burn pits. Although the burn pits, I would say, have a lot to do with it, because if the stuff gets burned, and the stuff although titanium and stuff, you'd have to have super hot burn pits. That stuff's got to be from bombs dropping and the DU and rounds smashing into metal, so metal on metal type stuff. So it has to be going fast enough that it can create enough friction that it would literally vaporize. Well, not maybe vaporize, but atomize this stuff into smaller particles so that it lands in the dust and then gets picked up and breathed into these soldiers' mouths. Although if they were in the middle of a dust storm, it wouldn't be that hard to get the dust in your mouth, right? Or in your lungs. Makes you wonder, what the hell is in the dust? A massive Pentagon-funded population study called the Millennium Cohort Study found that 14% of troops who deployed to Iraq report experiencing chronic respiratory symptoms such as cough, bronchitis, shortness of breath, and asthma starting during deployment or afterward, compared with 10% who did not deploy. Some service members were sickened during exposure to fumes from a sulfur mine fire that burned near Mosul, Iraq in 2003, while others have blamed the military's use of open-air burn pits, to dispose of waste. Pits that produced fumes containing dioxin and other volatile organic compounds and other contaminants, including, I'm willing to bet, some metal particulates. But again, things would have had to have been crushed and smashed and thrown in there in pieces. I think, and I'm willing to bet a lot of the chronic lung problems do, without a shadow of a doubt, come from these burn pits. There's no doubt there are people that already died of cancers from the burn pits. Okay? Go look it up. Veterans who've died, they've come back, and they're already dead because of the burn pits. No questions asked about that. I wholeheartedly agree. But there's metal fragments in their lungs. How does the metal get that small? How does it get in their lungs? I'm telling you, there's a big, military times, great. Glad you're writing about the burn pits. That's great, because I know 5-6 years ago that was not even talked about. So that's great. Burn pits, I'm glad you guys are talking about it. But what about the depleted uranium? You're looking at the new Agent Orange of this century. Okay? last century, 20th century, it was Agent Orange from the 60s, and now you're going to have in the 21st century, DU. I mean, they've been using it longer than that, but you're really going to see an increase, especially from Iraq and Afghanistan. I've talked to Doug Rocky about this. In fact, I'm going to have to dig some of those older interviews out. I'm going to have to email Doug and see if he's feeling good enough to do another interview, because I know he's sick. If he's not, I'll just I'll edit up the other ones and air them again for everybody. I'll cut out the commercials from the old archives when I interviewed him. I've interviewed Doug Rocky about DU and veterans getting sick from shots and all the chemicals they were exposed to, and camisea and everything else. I interviewed him twice about this. Very in-depth interviews. This is real. Like, if you're thinking about joining the military, this is a reality of what could happen to you. Yeah, you might get the GI Bill. Hey, that's great. I got the GI Bill, Popeye. I finished college on the GI Bill. That's great. Are you going to get cancer because of that too? So you end up dying at 50 of tumors all over your body? But hey, you got your college education paid for, right? So at least you got another 20 years out of life before you ended up getting kicked to the curb, right? Now, if you're thinking about joining the military, you need to seriously take this into account. It's not all fun and games. It's not Call of Duty. Oh, no. It's a future filled with possible disease, possibly being disabled. That's the truth. I know some people don't like it, but it's the truth. Look, even Snoring Dog in the background here. Monster agrees with me, right, Munchkin? Yep, that's what I thought. It's no joke, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, this is some real deal hardcore crap. And I'm willing to bet that, just detonation of IEDs, mortars coming in, that'll do it too. Constantly get, IEDs exploding all over the place. You're out on patrol and an IED goes off. That thing goes off. Okay, you might survive the blast, but the dust and stuff that's floating around you in the air, you're breathing and you're just swatting away. You might not realize it, but there's atomized particles of metal in there. You might not get hit with it now. Months down the road, it's going to hit you. You think the government's going to take care of you? Well, the VA will take care of me, Popeye. Really? Yeah, they'll come up and they'll come running up with a wheelbarrow full of cash. The government, what they used to do back in the day, if you were a disabled vet and it took them 15 years to give you your money or your disability benefits, the law required them to date the disability claim all the way back to when you were disabled from it. So that even if it was their fault that they jerked you off for 15 years, they had to pay for it. Because it was only fair. I mean, if the guy's out of work because of injuries he received in the military and he can't work in the civilian world for like 15 years and he's got to rely on other people to take care of him and he's got to borrow money here and there. I mean, you got to figure he's got some money to pay back to some people or he's going to have debts, right? That cost him a lot of money because his contract with you, the military, put him out of work. So you're supposed to own up to your end of the bargain. You know what they do now? They don't do that anymore. Now, they passed a law a while ago. They changed the rules. Congress. Yeah, they changed the rules. Do you know how far back they go now with retro? And I know some people are going to say, well, good, screw them. You shouldn't get money. But again, if you're out of work 5-6 years because you can't work, I mean, I'm not even talking 15 years. Say you're out of work 5 or 6 years because of your injuries. And there are people that have been out of work for 5 or 6 years while they're fighting the VA. Because they can't get a job. See, fighting the VA for benefits doesn't mean you don't have medical benefits. Usually they give you the access to the doctor right up front. Okay? Once that's not that hard. It's getting the financial benefits, the coverage of if you cannot work. Okay? Just like somebody would apply for unemployment benefits. Well, it's the same thing. Difference is you signed a contract with the government. The government agreed that if you got hurt, they would pay for you. So while people are fighting for those benefits, sometimes 3, 4, 5, 6 years, they can't work because if you're really disabled and you have doctor's appointments, which now people are going to find out about with Obamacare, but the way the VA works, if you have a doctor's appointment at 10 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to get probably seen until 11, if you're lucky. And by the time you get out of there, it'll be noon or 12:30. How many bosses are going to let you say to them, hey, yeah, I got a doctor's appointment at 10 o'clock this morning, and I should be back around like 1:30, 2 o'clock. They're going to look at you and be like, dude, what are you doing, screwing off? No. A lot of vets lose their jobs because of that. You know, I've had it where I have a doctor's appointment at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I don't get seen till 2:30 in the afternoon because there's so many veterans waiting to see one doctor. Well, now Obamacare is going to give you all the same experience. I know plenty of people that are trying to get appointments with their primary care physician, and it went from what would normally be like a week waiting period to a 3-month waiting period because everybody and their mother is now trying to make appointments with the same primary care physician because it's the same few doctors in their medical coverage loop. Anyway, I digress. If you're thinking about joining the military, you need to sit long and hard and think about it before you do. Because the possibility that you could be exposed to something that is going to change your life forever is very high. And it doesn't mean that you're going to go to a war zone and get exposed to this. I know people that were exposed to chemicals and things here in the States. There's DU contamination here in the United States at firing ranges. This is real, ladies and gentlemen. I am the anti-recruiter, I'm telling you. It's not worth it. Do something else. We're going to break, we'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to switch gears up here a little bit. Another health topic, though, or health-related topic, I guess you could say. Fukushima. Uh-oh. All right, that's what it should be called. Fuku, we should do something. Well, we're going to be Fukushima'd. We're already Fukushima'd. Scary stuff. They want to dump TEPCO, being they in this scenario, want to dump radioactive water that they have in storage tanks into the Pacific Ocean. A lot of it. Now, it's somewhat filtered, but it's still radioactive. Their thought is, well, the Pacific Ocean will dilute it. It's radioactive. It doesn't dilute. I don't think people understand how radioactivity works. Yes, water can melt away sugar crystals. It does not melt away radiation. Radiation is still there. The particle is in the water. It doesn't dilute it. Not until it gets beyond its half-life. And that has nothing to do with the water. I know scientists, I'm sure there's some scientists that'll try to argue with me. No, it'll dilute it, Popeye. You have a PhD? That's why we have radioactive seawater hitting the West Coast, right? Here in the United States. Radioactive seawater hitting the West Coast. Not the fallout in the atmosphere. They admit that already hit within a few days that hit us. No. The radioactivity that they're talking about hitting the West Coast, which even the mainstream media, even though it's little 10-second blurbs here or there, the radiation that they're talking about hitting the West Coast is the radiation in the water. Yes. The atmospheric stuff got here within a few days. No. They're talking about the water. Yeah. And the worst part is, our government doesn't really want to monitor it. Neither does the Canadian government. The Mexican government isn't doing nothing. Nobody wants to monitor it. As if there's nothing to worry about. You get these officials, oh, there's nothing to worry about. You're being an alarmist. There's no reason to be upset. There's every reason to be upset. And furthermore, we shouldn't just be upset about Fukushima. There's plenty of these GE reactors all over our country. They need to shut them down. Well, then we won't have power. Come up with other ways for power. Oh, that's right. Our current president's been blowing up, bankrupting coal-fired or coal-fired electric plants, so that way they have to sit and pretty much demolish these things, and they blow them up. The demolition company comes in and does it, but his policies are destroying them. And of course, he's pushing policy. He's a puppet, but just another Muppet in a long line of them. But I don't see them going after nuke power plants. Nope. They give them a clean bill of health, let them run. Some of these plants are beyond their time. Some of them have, when Fukushima happened, they found out a lot of them had expired permits and stuff. The government doesn't care. Don't worry about it. Let's go have a beer. Don't worry about that power plant. It's fine. Right? Until it goes, and then everything's screwed. But don't worry. Ann Coulter tells everybody that radiation is good for you. She said that everybody in Japan should be happy that they got irradiated because now they won't get cancer. Couldn't make this up. Go back 3 years. You don't have to go back 3 years. Go on YouTube and type in Ann Coulter says radiation is good for you. It'll come up. If I remember correctly, she was on Bill O'Reilly's show, and Bill O'Reilly even gave her a look like, what are you talking about? For Bill O'Reilly to look at you like you're a moron, you must be a moron, because he's a moron. And I don't mean the fake look that Bill gives you. I mean, this was like a real look. Like Bill looked at her like, what? Did you just say what? Of course people wouldn't want to be over there. Idiot. Anyway, so Abby Martin on her show, Breaking the Set, I think it was today, she had two guests on talking about Fukushima. They're both from different organizations regarding the safety problems that are rampant in the nuke energy industry. And these two gentlemen really got to the core. They cut through all the crap that's out there from the government, saying, oh my God, there's nothing to worry about. You guys are being all, fear-mongering conspiracy theorists. No. These guys cut right through it. They don't try to say, special weapons or bombs or anything like this. They don't say tsunami bomb. They don't say, oh, they did it on purpose. They get right down to it. They don't fearmonger with, oh my God, the rain is coming down glowing green or anything like that either. They get down to it. They give the facts. And I wanted to play this bit of audio for you all because as I said in the promo for the show, it's a Fukushima update, and me just talking about TEPCO's announcement of releasing it is one thing, but these guys get into a little bit more detail than I even know about. So sit back, put your feet up for a few minutes, and let's listen to what Abby Martin and these two gentlemen have to say about the latest news on Fukushima and TEPCO, especially TEPCO wanting to release I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of tons of radioactive seawater into the Pacific Ocean. As if by the way, they're still releasing radioactive seawater as we speak right now. So now they just want to dump more radioactive water into the ocean. Thank you, TEPCO. Thank you. As Einstein said, it's a hell of a way to boil water.
Yesterday marked the third anniversary of one of the worst environmental crises in history. The world was stunned by horrifying images of the massive tsunami that hit the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant and caused the subsequent meltdown of its reactors. Now, 3 years later, there are still several unanswered questions regarding how the nuclear leak will be contained and what the long-term effects of the radiation will be for the Pacific Ocean and atmosphere. So to help me break this down, I'm joined by Kevin Camps, radioactive waste watchdog of BeyondNuclear.org, and Tim Judson, executive director at the Nuclear Information and Research Center. Thank you so much for coming on, both of you.
Thank you.
Tim, I want to start with you. The news that Japanese officials at Fukushima may soon make a controlled dump of hundreds of thousands of tons of radioactive waste in the Pacific Ocean. But TEPCO already admitted that 300 tons was already leaking every day. Mm-hmm. I mean, what difference does it make at this point?
Well, it makes a big difference. First of all, the reason that they're doing this is because essentially they haven't been able to mitigate those other, the groundwater flow through the site where they've got these 300 tons going out into the ocean every day. This water that they've been storing in these tanks has ostensibly been filtered, but is still really contaminated. And the idea that they're just going to, start dumping that water wholesale into the ocean is just a sign that that the priorities here are completely off. Right now, the Japanese government is diverting billions and billions of dollars and and untold government resources into trying to restart their other 48 reactors, when they don't have this situation under control. And that's just a really misplaced set of priorities.
Kevin, let's take a look at this animation created by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration showing the radioactive particles, of course, in the wake of the disaster. How should we interpret this now? And with the way the climate functions, where did this radiation go?
Well, my understanding is this image from the National Oceanic, NOAA for short, is from March of 2011. It shows atmospheric releases, 75% of which did fall out on the Pacific Ocean. But as you mentioned, it's been an ongoing leak, 72,000 gallons per day of radioactive groundwater going into the Pacific. So this is an unprecedented catastrophe for the Pacific Ocean. But those atmospheric releases reached North America within just days. One of the figures that sticks in my head was Boise, Idaho, April 2011, radioactive iodine-131, which is a vicious radioactive poison that attacks the thyroid gland, at levels 242 times the Safe Drinking Water Act. So in Virginia, in the first days of this catastrophe, the state of Virginia warned people not to drink rainwater. So this is a global catastrophe.
And it's ongoing, of course, or has it dissipated?
Well, it's ongoing in the terms of the 300 tons per day going into the ocean, but the hundreds of thousands of tons that they would dump, tritium is in there, and it's very difficult to remove. But a colleague of ours, Dr. Arjun Makajani, has proposed bringing in a supertanker, getting the wastewater off of that fragile, vulnerable site, taking it somewhere else to deal with, instead of just dumping it in the ocean like it's a giant sewer or something.
And I think that's really the thing that confuses people the most is where is this going? I mean, it's going to the Pacific Ocean. It can go all over the world. It's terrifying people who are seeing these doomsday predictions. Tim, there's the question over the safety of seafood. All we're hearing is either don't eat it, you have nothing to worry about. Can you give us any sort of insight on what we should be doing about seafood from the Pacific?
Sure. So there is some amount of testing that's going on, although much less than what people think should actually be happening. Right now, the levels that they're detecting in seafood are within permissible limits. The problem is that what's permissible, and the what's permissible in the U.S. is about 10. The standards in the U.S. are about allow radiation levels that are about 10 times higher than what's considered safe in Japan right now, and so it's really up to people to decide what they're comfortable with. I think really the point to underline here is that this kind of radioactivity, especially the really harmful radioisotopes that are at issue here, don't occur naturally in fish. They're coming from Fukushima, they're coming from Chernobyl, they're coming from atomic weapons testing, and people shouldn't have to worry about this. And the fact of the matter is, that we can't stop eating, but we can stop nuclear power.
Very well said. Kevin, and you just kind of outlined where the radiation went, where it is now, but for people who are very concerned on the West Coast, I mean, is that overblown in terms of the threat to radiation continuously with rainfall and stuff on the West Coast right now?
Well, an issue that's just happening now is 3 years on, the radioactive plume in the ocean is reaching the west coast of North America. It's already hit the Canadian shores of the Gulf of Alaska. It's moving down to Seattle probably next month. And by summer, it'll go further south, the California coast, for example. What this is doing, as Tim said, is it's adding to artificial radioactivity in the background. And every exposure that we have to radioactivity is harmful to our health. There's no safe dose. There's no threshold below which it's not harmful. So we're just adding to this burden. And in the food chain, in the seafood supply, for example, bioconcentration, where these artificial radioactive poisons build up in the food chain, and we sit on top of that food chain.
Right, we're already getting enough radiation as it is. We don't need to continue piling it up and worrying about this. Tim, there's so much disinformation as we're talking about. Where do you guys go to find the most reliable sources about the disaster? There
are different blogs and websites that are doing good sort of filtering of the bad information that's out there. For instance, there's END News is a good source. There's some other ones out there. We actually post a lot of the good stuff to our website, so people can go there to find what's really the trustworthy information.
Great. Do you have anything to add with advice?
Given that's the 3rd anniversary of Fukushima, I've been rereading things like the Japanese Parliament investigation report, and there's incredible revelations in there. And Tokyo Electric, of all companies, will every once in a while admit that 6 months ago, the figure they gave, well, you need to double that. So what we're trying to do is keep track of the admissions by Tokyo Electric, by the Japanese government, and that's kind of a minimum. We really can't trust their data. And then groups like safecast.org are doing tremendous work on the ground in Japan. It's spreading to other countries, including the United States. verifying what the radiation levels are through independent monitoring.
I think that's really where we have to rely on, because as we know, TEPCO has been grossly incompetent, criminally negligent up to a certain point. I mean, it's shocking. Mice chewing through the wire. I mean, it's just like, and it's absurd. Kevin, the U.S. has 104 nuclear reactors, at least 22 of which are near identical designs that the GE reactors in Fukushima. This, coupled with the near impossible task of actually removing the waste, storing it safely. Why is scaling back nuclear energy not a more pressing concern in this country?
Well, I think there's some good news. A record-breaking year in terms of reactor shutdowns, 5 reactor shutdowns in the U.S., including Vermont Yankee, which is a Fukushima Daiichi twin, will be shut down by the end of this year. As Prime Minister Khan said in Japan, though, it's a huge fight. In Japan, it's the most powerful political and economic lobby, he said, the nuclear industry. In the United States, it's one of the most powerful. So that's what the grassroots movement is up against, are these billion-dollar corporations that own Capitol Hill, own the White House, and all too often own the courts as well.
Yeah.
And the implication of that here is actually, really concerning because, one of the things that's happening right now is that the Federal Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is responsible for setting safety standards in the U.S., is actually backing off of safety standards right now out of financial concern for the U.S. nuclear industry. And they're making a choice that it's better to have unsafe reactors operating than to have increased safety standards and have some of these things shut down.
Oh, so they're kowtowing to the industry as well. I just think that if Japan can't even commit to shutting down nuclear power, I mean, what chance do we have? I mean, look at what happened there. What is it going to take?
Well, the miracle in Japan is that for the past 3 years, they have 48 still operable reactors. 4 were destroyed at Fukushima Daiichi. 2 more were retired there because the site's so radioactive. 6 dead reactors. They have 48 still operable, and this huge groundswell of public opposition, unseen before in Japan, with protests of 250,000 people at the prime minister's residence. Mm-hmm. They have kept all those 48 shut down thus far. So the fight is on. Prime Minister Abe, very pro-nuclear. The people of Japan, a majority saying no more of this stuff. And, the same is happening here in places like Vermont.
Good. And Tim, of course, there's no immediate solution. As we've seen, it's just been a complete disaster ongoing. But in your mind, what's the best case scenario for Fukushima? We have about a minute left.
Sure. Well, I think the best case scenario for Fukushima is that the Japanese government, sort of gets religion on this and decides to stop pushing for new reactors, really dedicates their resources to getting this accident under control. And that's really, I think, where we've got to start.
What do you think?
Renewables are the future, and Prime Minister Khan, who served during the catastrophe, is now a global leader in the anti-nuclear movement. He introduced solar PV legislation, a feed-in tariff that has been hugely successful. So solar PV is growing by leaps and bounds in Japan. Germany has sworn off nuclear power through renewables and efficiency. That's the future.
It's possible, and it's time that we start doing that. You guys, thank you so much for coming in, breaking down some of this disinformation. Tim Judson, Executive Director at Nuclear Information and Research Center. Kevin Camps, Radioactive Waste Watchdog at beyondnuclear.org. Really appreciate both of you coming on.
Thank you.
Now, this just baffles me, the last part that he said. Well, there's a few things, but the last part just baffles me. The government is pro-nuclear, and yes, I said nuclear. I'm like George Bush, and the people are not, and they're actually getting them shut down and getting them to stay shut down. I'm baffled. How does that work? Of course, I'm being sarcastic. Come on. That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. Now, I'm sure maybe they'll get some of them turned back on. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully they won't. Hopefully they'll all stay turned off. That's awesome. Maybe we could take a note, take a little memo. Hey, this is how the Japanese citizens are doing it. Maybe if we got pissed off about something other than Dancing with the Stars getting canceled or something. I don't know if it really got canceled. I'm just saying that. I'm sure that would probably cause an uproar. I mean, riots in the street. Are you kidding me? Cancel Monday Night Football and see what happens. People starving in the streets. Oh, don't worry about that. Fukushima radiation. Don't worry about that. Police state. Don't worry about that. Cancel Monday Night Football and I'm sure all hell would break loose. Over 250,000 people showed up at the Prime Minister's residence. That's awesome. I'm sure if that happened here, though, they wouldn't show it on TV. You wouldn't hear people. The mainstream media wouldn't talk about it. The alternative would. But the mainstream media, it would be like crickets. They'd be wondering where Justin Bieber was and if he ran a red light somewhere. Florida has at least 3 plants that I know of. That's scary. In this little, 90, 100-mile wide state? It's long, but it's not very wide. I know we got Turkey Point. I know we got one, and I know we got 2 more up north. That's scary. We have 3 of those things here in Florida alone. The fallout zone from Turkey Point, I talked about this on air last week. Go on your favorite search engine and type in fallout map for Turkey Point or Turkey Point fallout map. Click on it. Bring up a couple different articles, I'm sure, but click there, find the picture, look at the fallout map. Why are these things that close to major cities? Why do they put them on the coast? And then the thing that really does bother me, no sarcasm, that rather than worry about the safety of the reactors, the government would rather make sure that the nuke energy industry makes money, because they wouldn't want them to have to shut down any of their reactors and lose money if, because of stupid safety protocols. What? Wait, what? Yeah, we're gonna loosen some of our safety protocols so that these organizations, these companies, they don't lose any money. Wait, hold up. What? What? I'm going to repeat that one more time. They're going to loosen restrictions because, God forbid, these guys, these big corporations, they lose any money. I mean, that would be criminal. That makes no sense. Let's put that on a smaller scale for you people that maybe can't understand that. And I'm not making fun of anybody. I'm just saying let's put it on a smaller scale for people. Maybe it's easier to understand. Or put in your mind's eye. Let's say you're a tattoo shop. You do tattoos and body piercings. Your local health department is going to have standards that you have to meet or you cannot operate. And they'll shut you down. The health department could come in and they could shut you down. Boom. I'm not going to argue whether it's fair or any of that right now. I'm just saying. Health department could come in and shut you down, right? Just like these regulatory industries are supposed to, or agencies are supposed to handle the industry, the nuke energy industry. So the health department comes in and they have all these strict rules and say, for whatever reason, I use the excuse of if I have to meet these strict safety rules and all this stuff, like I have to use sterile needles? What do you mean I got to use sterile needles? I can't reuse a dirty needle I just used on a customer before. The guy said he doesn't have anything wrong with him. Why can't I reuse the needle again? It's still pretty sharp. Why can't I reuse it? Because believe it or not, those needles, they do get a little dull after the first use, but it really takes about 2 or 3 uses before they're dulled out. I know, it's old school tattooer right there. They used to make needles and then they would sterilize them. They reuse them, but they would sterilize them. They'd use them 2 or 3 times. But the needles, the whole needle bar and everything they used to sterilize. They don't do that anymore. Now they come prepackaged and it's single use. But that's referencing back to the old day. But so the health department comes in and says to me, well, Popeye, you have to, we have all these strict rules you have to meet. And I say, well, man, you're costing me money because I can't meet all these. If you want me to meet all these rules, I got to buy sterile needles. I can't reuse stuff. I have to actually buy chemicals to clean and sterilize the countertops and the floor. I can't do that. I'd rather just use a little bit of Windex and some Fabuloso on the floor. I mean, you want me to get red bags, which are the bio bags. You want me to have somebody actually come, a company, and pick up the red biohazard bags rather than just throw the waste out into the biohazardous waste out into the trash, which you're not supposed to do. Okay? You can get in trouble for that. That's a big no-no. You're not supposed to just take it into trash bags and heave it into the dumpster. You're supposed to actually have a company that comes and they supply you with the red bio bags and everything. You pay for all that stuff, but they come and pick up your little bio bag dumpster, either once a week or twice a week, depending. But say I say to the health department, well, look, you're costing me, because this does cost money to do this stuff and meet some of these standards. Okay, well, so it's costing me money. I can't operate like this. So you have to get rid of your stupid health standards. I'll make you a deal. I'll give you a certain amount of cash here. You take this and just don't make me have to worry about getting sterile needles, and don't make me worry about requiring that I have running water, so that you don't have bacteria build up and other things. You need running water to wash your hands and rinse out instruments. No. Don't worry about that. Get rid of that, and I can throw my trash right into a regular garbage can. Here's $500 cash, and that's how it works on the big scale. That's what they're doing. These agencies they're either bought and paid off, one way or another, because maybe back in the day they used to go to somebody that got in there as a good guy to do the right thing, and they buy them off. But now they end up just appointing people in these agencies, and not so much the lowly people, the lower scale people, but the higher ranking individuals. Again, you only need the right people in the right places. You get the higher ranking individuals that either used to be in the industry themselves or very close to the industry in one way, shape, or form, and that's who gets in there. Same thing with Monsanto and the FDA, right? Same thing. It's disgusting. It's absolutely and utterly disgusting. And they're playing with the health and the safety of your children, your grandchildren, your mother, your father, your husband, your wife, your neighbors, your friends, your loved ones, the entire planet in this instance, because they're playing, Fukushima is not something that just affects Japan. The West Coast is getting irradiated, and it doesn't matter if you think it's a little or a lot. You're getting hit. No amount of radiation is acceptable. They're buying off the watchdogs. We have to be the watchdogs. Again, the solutions to our problems are an inside job. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Hour 1 is up, but Hour 2 is coming up. Wow, Hour 1 went by fast. Don't blink, you'll miss Hour 2. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. It is March 12th, 2014, Wednesday edition of DTRH. They still haven't found that missing 777 yet. A little odd. Although there have been other crashes that they didn't find. It took them a week, 2 weeks. It's happened. There was one crash I remember that they didn't find for like 50 years, just because of weather conditions and the location. There still are some very remote areas of this planet, and just because we can fly over them with airplanes doesn't mean that if you were, crashed in one of these areas, that you'd be found quickly. Again, the plane could have disintegrated in air. Could have done a lot of things. Maybe it was I talked about this last night briefly. Maybe it was shot down, and they're just cleaning it up, and they don't want you to know about it. There's right now it's all speculation, but it's what is it, day 5 or going on day 6 now that they haven't found it yet. Now the Chinese say that one of their satellites, they think they've picked up some debris or something. You know what? I hope they find the thing, figure out what happened, and can at least give the families closure. Because at this point, I would pretty much. It's safe to assume that those people are dead, regardless of whether it crash landed into the ocean, a mountain, got sucked into a black hole. I would venture a guess that the people on board the plane all died. And I would just hope that the families get some sort of closure, because not knowing is, at least if you know your loved one is dead, you can mourn. You can move ahead. You can do what you have to do. If you don't know, there's always that nagging possibility in the back of your head that they could still be alive. Maybe they're on some deserted island, waiting for you. And oh my God, we should go out on a ship and find them. I'm sure we'll be able to save them. I mean, that kind of stuff. Whereas if you know they're dead, you can at least say, okay, they died in a crash. We can mourn them now, and now we can move on to that that period of our lives and that stage of this whole thing and that stage of our grief. And they can't even do that yet. So my heart does go out for the families of the people on board that aircraft, the crew, the passengers, just everybody. My heart does go out for you guys. Moving on, I want to get into another audio clip. I have a bunch of audio that I'm actually going to try to fit in for you. I always end up talking and ranting. I know this is my radio show, and that's the whole point of that. But whenever I want to play audio for you guys, I always end up, lining up. Like, I'll spend, an hour and a half making sure I got everything lined up the way I want it beforehand. And I always end up not being able to play everything. But I'm going to try to fit at least the most important, pertinent ones I can in right off the bat. So here in hour number 2, I'm going to play an audio clip. It's going to take up a good chunk of the rest of the first segment here. It's from James Corbett over at the Corbett Report. And this video in particular he did in conjunction with boilingfrogspost.com. That's Sibel Edmonds' website. I check out both websites. Both very good researchers, and then you should check out what Sibel Edmonds went through in her story by itself, but that's a whole nother thing. Anyway, Corbett put together a really good video, which I want to play for you, and he titled it Pretexts for War, How the Public is Deceived into Fighting. And I think it's very pertinent with all the fear-mongering that goes on, and oh my God, we need to go into Iran or Syria or this country or that country. I think it's important that you hear this. So kudos to James Corbett for putting this awesome video together. And sit back, put your thinking caps on, take out your pens and your pads, ladies and gentlemen, in case you need to take a few notes for when you talk about this in the future to anybody. Here we go. Pretext for War, How the Public is Deceived into Fighting. Thanks, James, for putting this video together.
This is an act of aggression that is completely trumped up in terms of its pretext. It's really 19th century behavior in the 21st century. The reason for this, David, is because you just don't invade another country on phony pretext in order to assert your interests.
When Secretary of State John Kerry made his now infamous statement about Russia's actions in Ukraine, the hypocrisy was immediately apparent to all but the most clueless of viewers.
Intelligence gathered by this and other governments leaves no doubt that the Iraqi regime continues to possess and conceal some of the most lethal weapons ever devised. The main reason we went into Iraq at the time was we thought he had weapons of mass destruction. It turns out he didn't, but he had the capacity to make weapons of mass destruction. But I also talked about the human suffering in Iraq. Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere.
But perhaps Kerry wasn't so wrong to expect the public to let him get away with such a transparently hypocritical statement. After all, the public have always been happy to go along with every pretext for war presented to them for decade after decade. After Iraq, there was Libya, where we were asked to believe that the invasion of the oil-rich country and rush to set up a central bank by the foreign-backed opposition was nothing more than an attempt to save the country from a power-mad dictator who was arming his troops with Viagra to help them rape innocent civilians.
Nick, you had a chance to speak with the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, the issue being Gaddafi, the Libyans, what they're doing. What did he tell you?
Well, one of the things he wants to investigate now, he says, his priority is to investigate allegations of rape that may be systematic and rape that's being assisted, he said, by the distribution of Viagra or Viagra-like products, sexually performance-enhancing products that are getting in the hands of Gaddafi's forces and are being used as part of gang rape. And these are allegations that are surfacing that he says he wants to investigate as a priority.
Until this pretext was overturned by a pesky reporter asking for actual evidence of these crimes.
How many people have been killed, and in which town, in which site, and what kind of the crimes he has ever done in your investigations?
I advise you to read the application of the prosecutor's office, many pages, I think it was 77 pages. We describe in detail the facts. Most of it is public. And the judges also decided, analyzing the evidence. So, of course, we are prosecutors and judges, so we rely on facts. So we prove the crimes. That's what we did. We present the case to the judges, and for a month and 10 days, 3 judges from 3 different continents make an independent evaluation, and they decided.
As pointed out by Luis Moreno Ocampo, the document does have 77 pages, but most of its content is not public. Pages 17 to 71 have been redacted, precisely the ones enclosing the summaries of evidence and testimonies.
Before Iraq, there was Afghanistan, where we were asked to believe that the war was necessary in order to get bin Laden, until we were told that was not actually the case.
So I don't know where he is. Nor, I just don't spend that much time on him, I'll be honest with you.
Similarly with the invasion of Grenada.
When the U.S. military made it clear that it was going to base this invasion on partially on a threat to U.S. medical students on the island, the U.S. media jumped in as if there really was a threat. Of course, there wasn't. That's why none of the medical students were hurt. When the United States made it appear as if Grenada was a base for Cuban operatives, the media started looking for them and imagining them and passing on reports of Cubans in military capacities.
And the Vietnam War.
Renewed hostile actions against United States ships on the high seas and the Gulf of Tonkin have today required me to order the military forces of the United States to take action in reply.
It does appear now that a lot of these torpedo attacks were from the sonar man, you see, and they get keyed up to a thing like this. Everything they hear on the sonar is a torpedo.
You're pretty sure there was a torpedo attack then?
Oh, no doubt about that, I think. No doubt about that.
No, it was just confusion. And events afterwards showed that our judgment that we'd been attacked that day was wrong.
And World War II.
No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory.
On the night of December 6, 1941, intercept stations picked up heavy Japanese radio traffic from Tokyo to their embassy in Washington. The machines clattered with the intercepted purple code groups. The tapes were rushed to the code breakers on Constitution Avenue, where the ciphers were decrypted. The text was then teletyped to the State Department. It ordered the Japanese ambassador to break off diplomatic relations at precisely 1 p.m. Washington time, when the sun was just rising over the Hawaiian Islands.
That vital need was the information available in Washington from the intercepted dispatches, which told when and where Japan would probably strike. I did not get this information.
And World War I.
Now, the Lusitania was a British passenger ship on its way from New York to England, 1915. At that time, England was at war with Germany, but we had not yet joined World War I. So the ship went down, And Americans were told that the Germans simply sank this ship to be ruthless. They saw an innocent passenger ship, wanted to kill a lot of women and children, and so down it went. But that's not why the Germans sank it. They sank it because the Lusitania was loaded from one end to the other with munitions, millions of rounds of ammunition and many other munitions. Everyone who survived that disaster said there were two explosions, smaller one and then a huge one. The small one was a torpedo hitting. The large one was the munitions detonating. The ship went down in just 18 minutes after a single torpedo hit. By the way, that's confirmed also by the logbook of the sub that sank. Lusitania, the U-20's logbook said one torpedo followed by massive explosion. Equally significant, before the tragedy, Winston Churchill, who was then head of the British Admiralty, had ordered a study to be done to determine what the political impact would be if a British passenger ship was sunk with Americans on board. And there were almost 200 Americans on board the Lusitania. And prior to the sinking of the Lusitania, an exchange took place between Sir Edward Grey, the British foreign minister, and Edward Mandell House, who was President Woodrow Wilson's top advisor. Here's the exchange of communications. Grey: what will America do if the Germans sink an ocean liner with American passengers on board? House's reply: I believe that a flame of indignation would sweep the United States, and that by itself would be sufficient to carry us into the war.
And the Spanish-American War.
When word of the Maine explosion reached America, some people, including the powerful newspaper owner William Randolph Hearst, immediately blamed Spain. And most of the public believed them. But a nagging question remained. No direct evidence linking Spain to the sinking of the Maine had been found. So why had the ship blown up? In the 1970s, the Navy launched a new investigation into the case. Admiral Hyman Rickover concluded that the explosion aboard the Maine was not caused by a mine at all. Instead, the ship sank because of a terrible accident. Using various techniques, modern researchers have confirmed Rickover's conclusion that the blast was probably indirectly caused by a spontaneous combustion fire inside the Maine's coal bunker.
It would be the height of naivete to believe that the political caste of our own age were any different in their willingness to blatantly fabricate false pretexts to rally the public into war. But perhaps the public is finally catching on. Kony 2012 became a viral video sensation 2 years ago, with press-seeking celebrities endorsing the slick propaganda, seeking to justify the deployment of AFRICOM troops to Uganda in the search for Joseph Kony. But the video was quickly exposed as a sham when independent internet-based researchers discovered that the producers of the video, a group called Invisible Children, had been working with US aid and attended a US State Department-linked summit in London in 2010. The simplistic Kony narrative was further undermined when the internet enabled Ugandans to speak out directly against the video to viewers around the world.
When the Kony 2012 video came out, there was this general feeling that it oversimplified the story of Uganda and also the story of northern Uganda, but also it did not tell the current stories of people in northern Uganda and the current challenges. But also we saw that the story was grossly mistold.
Similarly in Syria, the August 2013 chemical weapons attack in Ghouta was quickly seized upon as a pretext for military intervention in the country.
The indiscriminate slaughter of civilians, the killing of women and children and innocent bystanders by chemical weapons is a moral obscenity. By any standard, it is inexcusable, and despite the excuses and equivocations that some have manufactured, it is undeniable.
A study has now challenged the US claim that Syrian government forces carried out the attack. The study is being conducted by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the MIT. Based on mathematical calculations, the study examined the range of the improvised rocket used in the attack, saying it was too short to have been launched from government-controlled areas. The MIT report concludes that based on the firing range and the troop locations, all possible launching points within a 2-kilometer radius were in insurgent-controlled areas. The report goes on to challenge the U.S. Secretary of State's key assessments of the chemical attack that he presented to the American people last August in an effort to muster support for a military strike on Syria.
And massive worldwide protests, organized on the back of the public's incredulity at yet another Iraq WMD-like lie, managed to get the Obama administration to back off its headlong rush to war. And now, another Kony 2012-like video production is attempting to make a similar case for why Americans and their NATO bloc allies need to be involved in the current Ukrainian crisis.
And now I ask you to build this freedom in our country. You can help us only by telling this story to your friends, only by sharing this video. Please share it. Speak to your friends, speak to your family, speak to your government, and show that you support us.
And just like Kony 2012, this video, too, was exposed for its ties back to the Council on Foreign Relations and the U.S. State Department foreign policy apparatus.
The origins of the video are not quite as grassroots as is portrayed. The clip was produced by the team behind A Whisper to a Roar, a documentary about the fight for democracy all over the world, which was funded by Prince Moulay Hicham of Morocco. The quote, inspiration behind the documentary was none other than Larry Diamond, the Council on Foreign Relations member. The Council on Foreign Relations is considered to be America's most influential foreign policy think tank and has deep connections with the US State Department. Hillary Clinton even half-joked that she wouldn't have to go far to get her orders because the CFR is just down the street from the US State Department.
But it's good to have an outpost of the Council right here down the street from the State Department. We get a lot of advice from the Council, so this will mean I won't have as far to go to be told what we should be doing and how we should think about the future.
Perhaps the saddest part of all is that once the people whose plight was exploited for the war propaganda have been used, abused, chewed up, and spit out by the war machine, they are completely forgotten about. How many of those same flag-waving propaganda repeaters that pretended to care about the Libyan people, for example, even know what is happening in the country now that the NATO bombs have stopped raining down and the corporate media is telling us to look elsewhere?
We filmed from our hotel balcony as two rival militia clashed. It turned into the worst fighting since the overthrow of Colonel Gaddafi. Libya's weak government has no control. The men with guns are a law unto themselves. The brigades who spearheaded the Libyan revolution now threaten to destroy it.
The simple truth is that the people who fight and die in these bloody wars of aggression are never the ones who benefit from the slaughter. For this reason, the combined resources of the State Department, the corporate media, and countless foundation-funded NGOs are required to sell these lies to an increasingly skeptical public. But now we stand at a crossroads of history, with the public, perhaps for the first time, able to instantly research and expose the propagandistic claims of the ruling establishment almost as soon as they are made. In some ways, the public is better positioned than ever to abandon that 19th century world of war pretexts that Kerry was referring to. Perhaps we can start by consigning politicians like Kerry and all the other liars who have enabled countless slaughter, warfare, and bloodshed throughout the years to the dustbin of history by simply refusing to believe their transparent lies.
And again, thank you to James Corbett for that report. Go check out boilingfrogspost.com and I think it's corbettreport.com. James does a really good job. I got to get him on the broadcast. He's just an all-around awesome researcher. He really does a ton of research, and he knows what he's talking about. Like when he connects dots, they're not imaginary. They're there. You can bet that he does his research. Again, thank you to James Corbett for that excellent video. It's titled Pretext for War, How the Public is Deceived into Fighting. You can go watch it over on YouTube. You can see that time and time again, we get lied to and suckered in, and we keep buying it over and over and over again. That's why last night I talked about Marco Rubio. To me, I see PNAC. I see the same dirtbags that were responsible for 9/11 and the Bush administration and all that garbage. I see, Dick Cheney and his ilk. That's what I see when I see Marco Rubio and when I see Rand Paul or any of them. Ted Cruz, they're all controlled by the very same people. They're faux conservatives, again, following the same pattern over and over and over again. Well, we had Bush and we had Clinton, and some people didn't like him, so we got Bush. And then Bush was a conservative, and then, he sucks, and then we had Obama. Well, now people don't like Obama, so now we'll go back to a conservative. Let's put Rand Paul or somebody back in, because that'll change things. That'll make it better, right? No, then we'll be pissed off at him in 4 years or 8 years, and then we'll vote a liberal in, and then that won't change things again, and then oh God, it's not changing. Oh, it's just repeating over and over and over again. So let's stop. Between voting, war, we keep getting suckered in time and time again. No, we're going to be smarter this time. I swear, we're going to be smarter. We won't get suckered in. I won't buy that crap. And then, but I got to support the troops. I'm not against the troops, Popeye. You're a vet. Are you against the troops, Popeye? I thought you loved troops. I thought you talk about good stuff about vets all the time. I do support the troops. I actually support them in reality. That's why I say bring them home and starve the military-industrial complex. Starve the beast. That's how I support the troops. I don't put a bumper sticker on my truck that says support the troops, or wear a bracelet on my wrist that says I support the troops. I don't have a little fancy window sticker in my apartment that says I support the troops. No. None of that. I support the troops by doing radio broadcast, trying to bridge the gap between veterans and civilians, and veterans and active duty and just regular civilians, so that there's an understanding. I do radio shows talking about things like war crimes, exposing very heinous, dark things, very, very horrific things. Why do I do that stuff? Because I'm actually really supporting, quote-unquote, the troops. I'm telling the truth so that the general populace will wake up and it'll stop. Otherwise, it's just going to continue, and it's going to be a meat grinder, and it's going to be this endless cycle of young people being thrown into the meat grinder. Do you want to keep seeing this? Do you want to keep seeing the beast being fed? I know I don't. Go out and be an anti-recruiter yourself. If you know someone that's joining the military, sit them down and explain them things. If you're not a vet yourself, and you know somebody that's a vet, see if you can sit down and if the person, most vets have the same outlook on things. Maybe they can explain to them the realities, at least. Not try to turn them off, but at least let them hear the realities of what happens. Maybe play them some Iraq Veterans Against the War videos. IVAW. Look it up on YouTube. The Winter Soldier testimonies. I've played the audio before. I'll be playing it again soon for you. We need to starve the beast. And we need to stop buying into their lies. We need to stop buying their false pretexts. Weapons of mass destruction. But they're not there. But it's good we went in anyway because he was a dictator. Really? That's not illegal. But we could do it because we're us, right? But if it was somebody else, we'd stand up to him because we're the world's police. You see my point? That's called hypocrisy. In fact, if you look up hypocrisy in a definition, it says, see also U.S. foreign policy. We're going to break. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment of tonight's live edition, DTRH. Wednesday night edition, hanging out with Snoring Dog here in the background. That's right, Monster. You make so much noise. You sound like a little mini chainsaw, and thousands of people get to hear what you sound like, my little love. Oh, she's so adorable. Anyway, two last pieces of news I want to talk about tonight. First, I want to talk about war on drugs, little snippet, little example of why the war on drugs needs to stop and how this has turned into a money-making situation more than just protecting people from things, even though it's more, the war on drugs is more about a war on morals, right? Because it's more of us trying to regulate human behavior than more than anything else. But then black markets pop up, and then you have the Mexican cartels. Anyway, there's something I've been wanting to play for you for a while. Now, this goes back a couple months that this story became public, but it doesn't make it any less of a problem and any less of an example that, the war on drugs has become a money-making situation for police. Then, because I like to try to end the show on a good note, I have a possible piece of good information, or news, we'll say. So I'll save that for the second half of the last segment here. First, let's get into my war on drugs news, which would be the Sunrise, Florida police make millions selling cocaine. Whoa. What? That's right. And this isn't one in particular city, and that's it. And it's one case, and that's it. This happens all over the country. Again, the war on drugs turns into a money-making scheme for police departments in cities and counties and states, and even the federal government to a certain degree. And then, of course, you also have the security / police military industrial complex, whatever you want to call it, that feeds Homeland Security and all these police and government agencies. Anyway, I digress. So this goes back to the Sunrise, Florida. Sunrise, Florida is a city here in South Florida. And yes, this is one, I'm highlighting a specific case, but this specific case, again, shows a much larger problem in the war on drugs. So the Sunrise, Florida police are making millions off selling cocaine. What? That sounds insane. Let's go to the audio.
Police in the city of Sunrise don't just arrest the bad guys in town, they actually bring criminals to town. Undercover detectives and an army of secret informants are luring drug buyers into Sunrise from across the United States. Kentucky, Rhode Island, New Jersey, and from New York, Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island, and the Bronx. Even Colombia, Peru, and from Miami-Dade. Why would police bring criminals to town? Money. Police pose as cocaine suppliers and then bust these drug buyers in so-called reverse stings. Then police seize the cash they bring and the cars they drive to the drug deals.
They do reverse stings where they actually sell the cocaine to people. And what they're doing is they're luring people from not even within our community through their confidential informants that these people think they're going to get out of their financial difficulties and hardships with a quick, easy drug transaction. They make them pretty good promises and pretty good deals. It's almost like a buy one, get one.
Court records show Sunrise police have negotiated the sale of cocaine in popular family restaurants near Sawgrass Mills Mall, like TGI Fridays and Panera Bread, where they offer the kilos for steep discounts or on credit or even consignment. The buys often occur in a warehouse in Sunrise where police ultimately bust the buyers and seize the cash and cars they bring to the deal, all conducted legally under state and federal forfeiture laws. The cash and cars the police seize provides rewards for the informants, and the undercover cops who work the stings make generous amounts of overtime.
When I say overtime, we're not talking about a few hours overtime. We're talking about police officers who are now making hundreds of thousands of dollars.
A Sun Sentinel investigation has found that pretending to sell coke has proven quite profitable. Since 2009, Sunrise has arrested at least 190 people in cocaine trafficking charges, far more than any other municipality in the county. But most of these people are from somewhere else. 4 out of 5 of these arrestees list home addresses outside Broward County. Sunrise police declined to talk on camera to the Sun Sentinel, but Criminal Investigations Captain Robert Voss told the newspaper, quote, "Our job is to put bad guys in jail, and we do a good job of it." The cops often use a network of snitches to help them find cocaine buyers. They rely on paid and unpaid informants to give them names of people they believe are looking to buy large amounts of cocaine. The Sun Sentinel, through Florida's public records laws, obtained police department records showing its narcotics unit has paid more than $1.2 million to 79 informants recruited by the city since 2007. The newspaper found police often bring in female informants to ice deals with hesitant cocaine buyers in undercover stings. One female informant is considered to be their star moneymaker. Records show she's been paid more than $800,000 over the past 5 years. Her identity is well protected by the cops and courts, but the Sun Sentinel found she's a beautiful, middle-aged, sometime model with no apparent criminal record. In a deposition in May, a Sunrise sergeant said the woman has helped police stage 63 stings that netted the city more than $5 million in cash in cars seized from duped drug buyers. While some informants work for the money, others do it for mercy. They work for the cops in return for leniency in their own criminal cases. One man, for example, was busted by Sunrise in a reverse sting, but he didn't go to jail. He became an informant, and the judge sentenced him to 10 years probation. Lawyers argue it is problematic to rely so heavily on informants because they are not always properly trained.
So half the time you don't know what the informants are telling these people or how they're acting or how they're encouraging these people to get involved in these type of activities.
A mistake by a female informant significantly weakened the prosecution's case against Gustavo Borjas of South Miami. Borjas was arrested by Sunrise cops after bringing $23,000 to a cocaine deal. But he can be seen on police surveillance video saying he didn't want to test or open the cocaine, insisting he wasn't familiar with cocaine and that the deal was another man's, a second informant, standing nearby. The female informant can be seen on video grabbing the money from Borjas' bag and then stuffing his bag with cocaine. That female informant had a financial incentive to get the deal done. She made $3,500 for her role. A Sunrise undercover cop was at the deal too.
They're trying to get me to open a package which I'm supposed is cocaine, you know. I never tried it, so I can't tell you for sure. They're trying to get me to open. You know, at that point, I knew that I wasn't supposed to be there, so I keep on calling the other informant, you know, hey, this is your thing, dude. You brought me to do something, and now, you know, how come you're not doing it? You know, do your thing, you know, I don't even want to be here.
Borjas claims years earlier he loaned the male informant named Roberto money. And Roberto promised repayment if Borjas gave him $23,000, which Roberto would use to make a quick profit through a cocaine deal.
It wasn't anything overnight. It took him a good 3 months to convince me.
With Borjas' lawyer arguing entrapment, prosecutors agreed to a plea deal of 18 months probation. He had been facing 15 years in prison.
Lots of informants make lots and lots of money. I mean, that has happened, for many years in the United States. And a lot of them will produce a case any way they can produce it to get the money.
Prosecutor John Gallagher, chief of Broward State Attorney's Drug Trafficking Unit, declined to go on camera, but told the Sun Sentinel in an interview, the fact that someone travels from a different state to buy large amounts of cocaine shows the type of drug trafficker you're dealing with. But some question why Sunrise Police are inviting purported drug buyers into the city from other states and cities, rather than focusing on crime within the city's own borders.
The residents of Sunrise should care what their police department is doing. They pay the police department to keep them safe, to reduce drug dealing in their city. And when the police focus on bringing people in from out of town, how does that benefit the city of Sunrise?
Incredible, right? Just incredible. So they lure people in and they arrest them. I mean, they're not literally dealing them drugs and getting, although that's debatable about, cops that steal stuff from the evidence locker, whatever. Anyway, that's a side issue. In this case, they're luring them in and they're arresting people. A lot of it is entrapment. I mean, you can see this is purely a money-making scheme. I mean, some of the officers themselves are making a couple $100,000 a year doing this. The average police officer's salary is not a couple $100,000 a year. They're lucky if they make like 50, 60 grand a year. And now these guys are getting a couple $100,000 because of all the overtime. Yeah, you can bet your bippy that they'll willingly go and do these cases. And now it becomes, when you start to make profits off of this, profit becomes an incentive for the people involved, i.e. the police officers, the detectives and stuff, that becomes a real problem. for a multitude of reasons, but the biggest is because justice will actually get subverted. Innocent people will get, charged, thrown in jail, fined, whatever, and bilked of whatever assets or money they have just because it helps pad the bank accounts of these people. And that's not right. It's not right at all. How would you like if someone came to your house and they stole from your house and they stole from you and they took your stuff and they said it was because you did something bad and you had to pay retribution for it? How would you feel if some average person did that and they weren't wearing a Halloween costume with a badge on the front of it or wearing a little black robe? Okay? It's just bullying at its finest. I mean, this is what it is. If you break it down, they're just a bunch of bullies. I mean, it's getting out of hand. The war on drugs has turned police departments into they're like little paramilitary units. They're of course I know it's about more than that in the police state and everything else, but the war on drugs is the excuse that's used to, paramilitary units, this kind of crap where they're bringing in people from out of town and setting them up in order to make, millions of dollars in arrests and everything else. And you got to remember, when these people come in with their cars or they come in with the money, they have to forfeit that money. It's gone. And I'm willing to bet that they've gone as far as getting assets because the federal government will help them. So they'll go after these people's assets, like their houses and stuff, anything that they own. They'll sell it. Whatever they have to do, they do not care. They will take your stuff. Okay. And of course, it's all in the name of keeping everybody safe in the war on drugs. Yet they're literally bringing, quote unquote, these bad people who they say, these people that they're arresting, who they say they're horribly bad people and we're glad we got them off the streets. Most of them don't even come from around here, yet they're lured here so that they can be arrested. Well, they're still bad people. I like how he says just the fact that they come from out of state shows you what kind of drug trafficker you're dealing with. No, it doesn't. It shows me that they can probably get a better price here than in their home state, and that's why they came down here, idiot. Or maybe this is the only place that they know of to come get it, because it is, after all, Florida, and there's water on all sides of us, and getting drugs here in a boat ain't that hard. I was in the Coast Guard for 2 years, and let me tell you something. It wasn't that hard to get drugs here, ladies and gentlemen. Believe me when I say there's a lot of stuff that does get through. You'd be surprised. Okay, it's not as hard as you think. So maybe that's what they were thinking. Maybe they thought, well, Florida, that's where the cocaine comes in. Miami, I guess we go down to Florida to go get cocaine. Sunrise is pretty close to Miami. It's not that far off. It's only one county away. So maybe, that's where we'll go. We found somebody down in Sunrise, Florida. Look at that. Look how lucky we are. And they don't realize it's a setup. And then they get arrested. It's a waste of taxpayer dollars. It's a waste of a lot of stuff. And manpower. I mean, the guy at the end of the video made a really good point. What about all the crime that's not getting stopped or solved in the city of Sunrise itself? See, the city of Sunrise, the people in the city of Sunrise, they're paying the overtime for these officers. It all comes out of taxpayer dollars. And, things get, money gets reimbursed with some of the seizures and stuff. But, like taking houses or, forfeitures of the whatever money they have and things like that. But that still, the taxpayers didn't hire the Sunrise Police Department to lure, quote unquote, these horrific drug runners down here in order for them to arrest them. That's not what the taxpayers in that city want their police to do. I'm willing to bet that more than 50% of the taxpayers, if they actually knew what was going on and the money that was being wasted, I'm sure there'd be some people that would support it, but I'm sure that at least 50% of the people would be pissed off. At least 50% of the people, because they would see what kind of a waste of money it is. Anyway, I promised I would end the show on a positive note, and I will. Well, it's a somewhat of a positive note. I have one last piece of audio to play from you. I saw this little ditty on RT today. Apparently there is a proposed bill that would curb the militarization of the United States police departments. And I forget the bill, the number, whatever the hell it's called right now. But they'll talk about it, and they also get into the little, what was it? I think it's called the 1040 program or something like that. Whatever. Joe knows. It's like one of his favorite things to rant about. But they discuss that in here too. There's so much information in my brain sometimes, ladies and gentlemen. My brain is sometimes like a soup bowl of information. So sometimes numbers and things are hard to remember off the top of my head. Everything that I tell you, like on air, I don't have written down. So once in a while I'll have a little note here written down or there, but most of the stuff I tell you, like 98% of it comes out of my noodle right off the top of my head. So once in a while remembering a number or something is a tad bit difficult, especially when it's this late and I haven't had any coffee all day. Anyway, I want to play this piece of audio for you really quick before we run out of time because we only got about 10 minutes left. So here we go. There's literally a proposed bill. It's only proposed right now. That's why I said it's a slight chance of hope, but there is a chance of hope that perhaps maybe all these tanks, well, I shouldn't say tanks, they're not really tanks, they don't have treads, but armored vehicles like the MRAPs and other things going to the local police departments when they come back from Iraq or Afghanistan will stop. So there is a chance that this bill could pass. We'll see. I wonder how many military-industrial complex people, lobbyists, are going to run to the Capitol to try to stop this. But anyway, let's go check this audio clip out from RT really quick, shall we?
A small, sleepy town in North Carolina called Roanoke Rapids may bear little resemblance to Kabul or Baghdad, but its police department now has its own mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles, or AMRAPs. So do police departments in many other towns and counties across the U.S., all thanks to the Pentagon's so-called 1033 program, which provides or transfers surplus Department of Defense military equipment to state and local civilian law enforcement agencies without charge. Georgia Congressman Hank Johnson is about to introduce a bill that would rein in further police militarization. Joining me to talk about this is Michael Shank, Associate Director for Legislative Affairs at the Friends Committee on National Legislation. Michael, thank you.
It's good to be here. Thanks for covering this issue.
What is the driving concern behind this legislation?
We've got several concerns. There's a cost concern, there's an accountability concern, there's a cultural concern, what's happening to America's main streets. We're being militarized, and we're becoming more and more representative of a war zone, as you mentioned in your lead. But there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse potential here, and misuse. So in response to Occupy Wall Street, you see these armored personnel carriers and increasingly assault weapons, increasingly drones, aircraft being used by very small town police chiefs who, I mean, it's very much kind of boys and their toys using weaponry that they really don't need in the local community.
And especially with those military vehicles, why would you need that at a university campus? And
That's
we're
right.
talking about the University of Ohio, as I understand.
That's exactly right. And so these are weapons that run $600,000, $700,000 on the market. So these small towns are getting these weapons, this machinery, the MRAP, and then they have to do maintenance on it. So not only do they have a machine that they can't upkeep, they have a machine that ultimately they don't need. The bill that you mentioned, Congressman Johnson's bill, would both ban MRAPs coming from the war zone to small towns in America. It would also ban drones and aircraft and assault weapons. It would allow things to come across like, microwaves that are being used in the war zone. Certainly police chiefs might need to use for a microwave or refrigerator or a car or vehicle, something like that. But anything bigger than that, it bans and also does oversight. Currently, there's no inventory, there's no accountability. So police chiefs in Indiana and in Illinois are either selling them on eBay or giving them to friends. Assault weapons that we're talking, not the MRAPs, but the assault weapons are giving to friends selling on eBay. So there's really no accountability system in place. That's what the bill would look at.
And that is quite alarming. You talked about drones, and police departments are now...
I got to pause that for a second. That's awesome. Only the cops should have guns, and they're selling them on eBay or giving them to their friends.
Acquiring those drones, right. But their argument is that the drones allow them to patrol cities better. How would you respond to that argument?
Right. So there's certainly some benign use of drones in terms of surveillance, and the Department of Homeland Security is looking at that. The Department of Homeland Security is actually giving, in addition to this 1033 program, they're giving terrorism grants. They've given $34 billion so far to police chiefs all across America, to essentially in cash, to use how they want. So they're also buying assault weapons, drones, aircraft, MRAPs. The problem there is once it's armed, then there's an accountability issue. And there's a cultural issue to my earlier point. Do we want America becoming less and less safe, lower social capital? People aren't feeling safe in the public sphere. And we're reminding ourselves of the very war zones that we're essentially liberating or trying to protect in theory.
What about the Pentagon's argument that that's a way for them to recycle, basically?
Great question.
I'm sure that they don't put it in those exact words, but it is what it is, isn't it?
Sure. So we're bringing back 20,000 MRAPs from the war zone. So I would push back and say our strategy at the beginning was a little ill thought. If we have 20,000 MRAPs that we now can't use, we're probably going to put in a graveyard in Arizona or somewhere. So there's a strategic thing there, but we could recycle it. There's currently no audit of Pentagon use of any of this. The Pentagon hasn't been audited, won't be audited until 2017, 2018. So there's a taxpayer issue, because once these MRAPs are given to police forces, they won't be able to be used in the war zone again. This is great for defense contractors, because then they can get new contracts to build new machinery for the next war zone. So there is a cost to the taxpayer.
Michael, what are the chances of a bill like the one that you are proposing of actually passing in Congress? I mean, defying the Pentagon is not exactly what Congress is known for.
Right, because defense contractors have a hold on Congress, as does the Pentagon. I think it has a great chance. Every member of Congress we've talked to, Republican and Democrat, is on board because they don't want the main streets of America militarized. You know, there's a SWATification that's happening too. Radley Balco, who writes a lot on these issues, says 150 SWAT raids a day. So I think members of Congress, they're reporting to their constituency, and Americans don't want that kind of culture. And there's not just cause for these kind of militarization of U.S. police forces in America.
So it does have a chance to pass?
Absolutely. We expect it to pass the House. We're talking with the Senate about a Senate companion bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael Schenk.
Thank you.
Michael Schenk, the Associate Director for Legislative Affairs at the Friends Committee on National Legislation.
Well, that would be interesting if it actually did pass. Even Monster's chiming in the background here. I don't honestly know if it will pass. I don't want to be poo-pooing it or anything like that. Maybe it will. That would be awesome if it did pass. I mean, that would be one step in the right direction. That at least it would stop the flow of MRAPs to the streets. But then, what are they going to do with all those MRAPs? My God. Well, I'm sure somebody will buy one and turn it into some awesome monster truck or something that you can do things with that. Maybe if you have enough money, you can turn it into some sort of recreational vehicle. But police departments don't need them. I mean, you have to upkeep them and you have to maintain them. They get them for free, but you have to maintain them, and they're expensive to maintain. Very expensive, and there's no need for it. There is absolutely no need for police departments in the United States to be driving around in armored personnel carriers. They do not need them. I know they want to look cool because they see Marines out in Afghanistan or in Iraq, and they wish they were them for some reason. They want to be, maybe they were bullied or whatnot, and they never joined the Marines when they were younger, and now they're older and they're a little out of shape, and they wish they could be a Marine, or they wish they could be a soldier or something like that. So they decide they want to go, and act out some fantasy, and they want to dress up, and they want to put on military-style gear and run around and try to look cool, but that's not how it works, okay? You have to stop doing that. There's no reason for you to be driving down Main Street in an armored personnel carrier, a mine-resistant vehicle. I mean, come on. We don't have IEDs on the streets of the United States, although I'm sure if the federal government had their way, the powers that shouldn't be, I should say, had their way, they would stage said IED attacks inside the United States and then blame it on homegrown terrorism, homegrown insurgents. Oh my God, it's hit the United States. Do we need MRAPs? I mean, who knows? We'll see. We'll see how far this bill goes. You know what I say? I say we can turn this into a positive. Let everybody know that this is going on. Make this a little piece of viral information and get everybody to call their senators and inundate Congress with phone calls, inundate them with emails. I mean, they've done it with other things. Force them to do things the way you want them to do it. You're their boss. So imagine if everybody said, yeah, we don't want these things. We want you to pass these bills, and the bill got passed. And then at least look, it's not going to be the end-all, cure-all problem. Martial law is stopped. Potential martial law will never be. Oh, my God. No, but it puts a monkey wrench into the works. And that's what we need. So that would be cool. So there is a possibility that it could work, but we have to work at it as well. We have to push the idea and push the issue, ladies and gentlemen. Again, the solutions to our problems are an inside job, meaning in this instance, we need to get up and we need to do something about it. That's just the simple fact of the matter. And we are out of time. Man, 2 hours just went by in a blink of an eye, right, Monster? She's snoring away. She can't hear anything. She's in La La Land. I can't even get her to stop snoring so loud. Little chainsaw. Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. I'll see you all again tomorrow night. As I always tell you, these solutions to our problems are an inside job. I love you all. Be good to one another. Go do random acts of kindness. Give someone you love a huge hug. Tell them you love them. Just do good things. Put good energy out there. I'll catch you all again tomorrow night. I'm out.